And we are back here on Patriots 4th and 2. I'm your host today, as always, Derek Havens, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Steve Balestrieri. We are both PatsFans.com bloggers. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about our opening thoughts. We'll be discussing some of the divisional round playoff games from over the weekend, and then we'll end the show talking about the championship games. Some good action around the NFL this last weekend. And as far as the Patriots go, from our last show, the biggest conversation right now, which we'll get to in a second, is just the coaching staff around the team, the coordinating search. I feel like, Steve, let me ask you this before we even dive into our thoughts on the divisional round. Just to kind of kick it off, because we are a Patriots related show, so let's start with the Patriots related topic. I will say that it seems like everything seems like it's at a standstill, kind of waiting on Belichick's next move. And I just think there's just so many. There's so much uncertainty from everyone all over the staff, the entire coaching staff, and probably even people lower than that, wondering if they do or don't have jobs and a lot of moving pieces. What are your thoughts on that? Because it seems like Belichick is kind of holding everything up right now.
Yeah, and that's a big issue. Obviously, I don't think they should wait for Belichick. I mean, I know they offered jobs to his sons, but if they want to get on with life, offer the coaches that they want to keep a job and say, if you're not going to take it now, we're going to look elsewhere. I mean, you can't be held hostage by Bill waiting to get a position, because you have a lot of work to do to get ready, for free agency and the draft. And the longer this goes on, I mean, the more it's going to hurt you, I believe, especially if you're going to be forced to bring in guys from the outside, which, I think offensively it's going to go outside the organization. And I talked to Russ this morning and I got his feelings on that, and we'll get to it later. But, I think they really need to start moving on this. And I understand a lot of guys are very loyal to Bill, and they may follow him, but if these guys aren't going to be on board what's remaining, then it's time to move on. I really think that. I mean,
Right.
you can't wait for somebody else's shoe to drop before you start making moves.
Well, I think right now it's a weird position, not only for the Patriots, but for the league, Steve, because the league wants to avoid, as much as they love being in the kind of the conversation piece of all the talk shows and everything.
Mm-hmm.
They want news, they want to stay in the steady stream of headlines. They do also want to respect the process and make it fair, and it's extremely hard when there's teams that are having success and coordinators are trying to do their best to take care of their own personal stuff, also their commitments to the team, which are in overdrive at that time of the year. And they're also trying to look at career advancement opportunities, oftentimes, and with other teams. And it's just kind of a chaotic period. And they set all these rules and infrastructures in place, but it just seems like it makes it more convoluted. I don't know if they need to switch something up, but it's hard. And as far as Bill and the Patriots go, I think the Crafts and Mayo and everyone who's with the Patriots and upper management, whoever the heck that is, at this point, I think they're kind of sitting on their hands waiting for, let's use Belichick's sons, Steve and Brian, for example. I think there have been reports out that they have been extended an opportunity to stay. And I think they might be waiting on their dad. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just kind of painting a scenario, right? And if they're waiting for their dad, well, how long do the Patriots really wait before now they're doing themselves a disservice trying to fill out the rest of their staff? There's been some reporting done. It was Albert Breer, right? And then Evan Lazar kind of followed that up. And discussing that DeMarcus Covington could be elevated from defensive line coach to defensive coordinator, which seems like a really good move on a lot of different fronts. And Covington has been really gotten some high praise the last couple of years, and this year did an absolutely terrific job. So I think would be an excellent in-house candidate. But I mean, the offensive side is tough, because it's like the offensive side is a little less tough because you're talking about a whole new philosophy, all these new systems. It seems like the Sean McVay tree is kind of infiltrating those thoughts, and so if that's the case, it might be a little hard for some of those coaches to stay, not necessarily on the defensive side where a lot of things could stay. So Steve, it just seems like, long story short, we're all just kind of sitting around, and I think the Patriots are trying to figure out how long do we wait before we can't the arm of lending, kind of respect to Bill has to meet the also, the timeline before they do themselves a disservice hiring these coaches.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, you have to worry about your own team now. And I understand that, they're giving the guys that are loyal to Bill, they're giving them a little bit of time to decide what they want to do. But, when it comes to Steve and Brian, the Patriots offered them a chance to remain with the team. And, if in fact they've already told them, we don't know, that they're going to go with their dad, totally understandable. But now it's time to move on. And if they're not going to be in the mix, then, by all means, name a defensive coordinator and start getting to work on what you need to do. And especially on the offensive side, the defensive side was really good this year. Offensively is where this team struggled so badly, and that's what needs to be, reined in. Now, if it's, if their sights are set on coaches still in the playoff hunt, then yeah, I get that. You have to respect the process of the playoffs or whatever. But there's, time, the clock is ticking, and free agency is really about a month and a half away.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are things happening. And look, it could be one of those situations too, Steve, where they look on the offensive side of the ball and actually, let's just back up for a quick second.
Yeah.
Go back to Mayo's interview on the radio the other day. Okay. And if we're keeping it, just kind of sharing our own thoughts on it, obviously, and being honest with how we feel, it was very refreshing to see and hear Gerard Mayo's comments about the team, because it seemed like he was almost agreeing with a lot of the complaints which we've had, media members have had, fans have had over the year about what are the issues with this team. And so I think they've gotten aggressive on offense and looking at what they want and really, trying to bring in a diverse, I wouldn't say an overly diverse group in terms of philosophy. It's been that Sean McVay tree, but they've gone after a lot of different candidates and stuff. And so I think offensively, they're saying, we can't wait. We know this is a huge problem. We're going to go ahead and, fix it. Just like Gerard Mayo's answer about we're going to get the best player at a position that's really important. Well, the three of the biggest positions on the team are quarterback, receiver, and tackle. By the way, those are three very high-end earning positions. Oh, by the way, there's also three positions that have some of the best players in this draft class coming out, which will be in reach. So I think the offense they were getting aggressive with. My wonder is if they extended it. I've heard the report classified as they've extended the opportunity to Belichick for them to stay. I wonder if they said, yeah, we want to keep you around, but your role could be depending on when you get back to us. Because if the clock strikes midnight and there's a defensive coordinator out there they really like, and let's say it's not Covington, let's say it's somebody else, but let's say they go after Covington, or they go after an out-of-house candidate, Steve, and all of a sudden, Mayo's like Steve comes back and goes, well, you know what, we're going to stay here and I'm happy here. I'm not going to follow my dad. Well, Mayo could be like, well, yeah, but I told you, when this thing happened a couple weeks ago, you need to get back to me. Now we have a DC. You're going to have to be just like a linebackers coach, and maybe I can give you a different assistant role. I think the timing here is very important, and the classification of some of these guys, what their roles are going to be. I think is yet to be determined, and I still think the carousel is going to stop with when Bill cuts the music and everyone tries to find their chairs here.
Yeah, and right now it seems to be the only position open to him right now. It seems to be Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. And people are wondering if he's going to get a chair, if I'm going to use the musical chairs reference again, because it seems like Harbaugh to the Chargers seems like it will be done, if not by the end of the day, soon after. And I don't know. I do think it's a hard position, and some people are like stunned by it, and I am, but I'm not. Like on the surface, you're like, yeah, of course, Bill's going to get a head coaching job, but it's not overly easy if you're an owner unless you're just 100% confident that your team is just ready to actually compete and win a Super Bowl. It's hard because the reality is the reality, and Bill is 71 years old, and so what's he going to get 2-3 more years? I mean, it sounds ageist in a way, but it's really more like just realistic. Bill is not someone who wants to answer to a lot of other people. So to make it a collaborative effort is hard, because if he wants to run his program, his way, his style, he's at the top of the pecking order. You're handing over the keys to the kingdom for someone who has a short leash as it is. I just think it's a difficult conversation. And it's a different. It's a hard thing to do. And I've heard some people say, well, he could go in the TV and be great. Absolutely. He does that. I just don't think it's like Sean Payton. You go and do TV for a year or two and you come back and coach. Unfortunately, Payton has the benefit of having more time on his side, hypothetically, right? So it's like, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. And I think that the Blanks, Arthur Blank, the owner of the Falcons, they've gone after second interviews for what? Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel, Harbaugh, and now Bill Slowick too.
Yeah,
so
I just read that.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I just read that he did a second interview as well.
So they're doing their due diligence. I will say that as they're doing their due diligence, I've noticed the Vegas odds for Bill to be the next head coach for Atlanta are getting stronger and stronger on DraftKings. I've noticed over the last 48 hours. I tell Steve all the time, I've been, I'm always on the betting sites when there's news rolling around, because, who knows better than Vegas more often than not. So I just like to see where those trends go. And it, over the last week, it's gone from plus 125, which were the best odds for Bill to be the next Falcons coach, to now minus 425 as of yesterday evening. And again, this was just on one site, but still, I mean, I think it's trending that way. But again, I think a lot of people are wondering if he doesn't go there, what are the options going to be? And hold a pin on that response. Let's just take a quick second here to thank everyone for joining us live. Please take a second, if you like us, to subscribe to us on YouTube. If you downloaded the podcast later, wherever you leave a podcast, especially on Apple, like, share, leave us a review. It keeps us high in the podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. Steve, do you think ultimately Bill will be the next coach of the Falcons or somewhere else?
I don't know. I mean, looking back at your comments just a few moments ago, it's an age thing. You're only going to get a 2 to 3 year window with him. So it would have to be a team that feels like, okay, we're this close to winning all of the marbles, and we just need a coach like Bill to get us over the hump. That's why I kept harping on the Buffalo Bills. But it seems like that Sean McDermott is going to remain, because I think Bill would get that team over the hump. They have a closing window. they have a tremendous team, but they just haven't been able to put it together under McDermott. And we'll get to the games on divisional round, but Sunday was another classic example of that. But anyway, so that's the thing that's holding up the train, I think, with Atlanta. I mean, 5 years ago, Atlanta would be really tempted for a guy like Bill, because at that time, Josh McDaniels was still with them. And this was before he flamed out again. And then they could be looking at, okay, yeah, we're going to get Bill for 2 or 3 years, and then we'd have Josh McDaniel, and the train will continue.
It's hard to know. It's hard to know, Steve, what in this day and age, 100%. If sometimes if it's satire or if it's rumor, but by all indications, there are a lot of rumors that Bill would take a lot of his friends, with him, Josh McDaniels, Matt Patricia, Joe Judge. And if it is Atlanta, Steve, and they all go down there, they have the skill pieces. They have some skill pieces. They have a decent offensive line. They have a decent defense. If you can find the quarterback, there's been rumors that he takes his coaching staff down there, maybe takes a Kirk Cousins and tries to compete. And some people might say, well, that's not, the Falcons with a quarterback like Kirk Cousins, who is just, a little bit better than okay, it's not really much. Well, in that division, it might be. I mean, that division that division could get you, a home playoff game potentially if you're Bill. And if it is, I don't know if it's about the record. I don't know if this is about the record or Bill just simply doesn't want to be done. And honestly, if it has nothing to do with the record, he simply just doesn't want to be done. I think that he would potentially settle for another role besides being the head coach, but I just don't think he knows any other way, and that's just like his thing. And if he's going for the record, you could talk me into that he could get his wins in 2 years with Atlanta if he can bring in a good veteran quarterback and with a different situation. But I don't know. I don't know what he really wants. I just feel like there's so much being held up by Bill. It's gonna be fascinating to see, like, when exactly the dam breaks in New England, where all of a sudden they just say, because I don't know about you, Steve, I'm hoping to hear an OC and DC named very soon, and once that happens, the other coaching staff's going to have to get filled out too. So I think we're reaching that kind of tipping point here. I'll give it. We're recording this the 24th. It's Wednesday, 11:27 Eastern. I'll say by probably by the weekend at the latest, they're going to want to name a DC or OC on this team, Steve.
Oh, absolutely. But, like as you mentioned just again a moment ago, you bring in a Kirk Cousins who said he would be hard pressed to turn down an opportunity to play for Bill, which is kind of like saying, Bill, I'm right here if you give me a phone call. As you said, Atlanta have a pretty good defense. They have some good skill position players. All they really need is a quarterback and a head coach in that division, as you said. Not only could they get one playoff game, they might get 2 home playoff games.
Yeah.
Because I think, you add Kirk Cousins to that team and Bill, I think they'll sweep that division. So now you win a couple of other games during the season, which they're fully capable of. And then, you're looking at maybe getting 2 home playoff games. And, if you get a home divisional game in the playoffs, you're one step away from, being in the conference championship game. So
yeah, it is a weird balance. It is a weird balance. So I want to talk about the coordinators here, but I don't want to. I think this is a weird spot for Patriots fans because, like, Bill is still Bill for all of us. I mean, it's just Bill. So it's like he's still part of the show. So I can hear I'm sure there's some people who don't care. It doesn't really, it absolutely affects the team in a lot of ways, with the coaching staff and where it is right now. So it's still kind of a big focus. I want to talk about the coordinator search and give our predictions for the game. But let's talk about the divisional round first. We can take a break and then we can get into the coordinator talk and give our predictions in the second half of the show. So give me your thoughts, Steve, on the weekend. I thought 3 or 4 games, really good. Overall, really good weekend for the league. I thought a good weekend for the league, and it needed a league that needed a good week. I don't think it's been a good year. I stand by that. I don't think the postseason can necessarily save it. I thought the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, battle I thought was fun. And that must be Doc Rivers to the Bucks. Yeah. The
I meant
ESPN
to
alert.
put my phone on vibrate, and
It's unbelievable.
my
It's
ESPN app just told me Doc Rivers.
I should have the Tony Reali mute button for you.
Yeah,
But I don't know, Steve. I mean, it was a fun weekend of games. I was exciting. The scene in Detroit was awesome. I got goosebumps actually thinking about it. It was so cool to see that place just absolutely fired up. I loved the fact that I just loved the fact that you saw some really, really clean competitive games. And in a way, it kind of, as a Patriots fan, not to be a downer, as a Patriots fan, it kind of reminded you, man, you still have quite a ways to go before you can compete with some of these teams at this level. But from just appreciating, good football, it was good to see some games. What was your favorite part of the divisional playoff round?
Yeah, I mean, I liked 3 of the 4 games. I thought even the 4th game, the Baltimore Texans game, 10-10 at the half. And kudos to the Texans. I mean, they won 3 games last year, right? And they turned it around.
We were all waiting for that levee to break, but we were excited to see how long it lasted there, with Houston.
Yeah, and
there's a lot to be
there's
excited
no
about.
shame. There's no shame in losing to Baltimore. They're a really good football team. So, I mean, they pulled away in the second half, and their defense had a lot to do with that. I think Baltimore's defense is the kind of untalked about. Well, not untalked about, but it's talked about less than Lamar Jackson in the offense. But that defense of theirs is really good. But even that game, 10-10 at the half, it was still up for grabs at that point. But I liked all the other games. And once again, I mean, we were expecting a lot of high scoring games, and it came down to the defenses once again. That Green Bay, San Francisco game had a lot less scoring than I expected in it. And,
right.
But that one went right down to the wire. I think that was my favorite game of the weekend, and then in front of the home crowd, Christian McCaffrey does it again. I mean,
he's so
good. That guy is just incredible. To me, he's the MVP of the league. I know they always give it to a quarterback, but I mean, this guy does everything. And you watch him at the end of that game, they're down by 3 points or 4 points, whatever it was. And him to bust that long run for a touchdown. I mean, and that was a game I thought pretty much dominated defensively. Yeah, there was some offensive fireworks to be sure, but and again, Buffalo, Kansas City, another instant classic with those guys.
Yep.
But
and I think it is, I know the people, I think the obvious comparison is Manning Brady, right? Yep. And it was lopsided in that early too. But I think there are some similarities with, I guess, the way the Chiefs are constructed, right now is, with how good that defense is playing, and they are playing well. and how good Patrick Mahomes is, it does remind me a little bit. There are some similarities to Brady and the Patriots early with, I was laughing to myself, and I heard some other people on the radios have similar thoughts, coming out of the weekend, but I'm laughing at myself being like, man, I really just glossed over just like picking against Patrick Mahomes. Like maybe that was dumb. Like maybe it's just like maybe he's showing you that exactly I'm not, again, similar to all great, really great players. You don't pick against, you just don't pick against them. I'm not saying they won't lose their games at some point. The clock hits midnight on everybody, but man, he was great when he needed to be. The Chiefs, as good as the Bills played early, I just thought that, and I'm focusing on this game for a second, but the Bills came out and dominated on the ground and really were the more physical team. And they looked like a team that just, like they had found their run game throughout the year. And I thought that was true because they have been classified as basically a dome team that's playing in Buffalo for so many years. And I thought they finally looked like the more physical group. And I thought that was great of them to set the tone early. And then defensively, they collapsed again. Now, two things. For one, we've been on them about defense for a while now, Steve, and their head coach, who, by the way, should have absolutely been fired, and they should be going after Bill because that's how you go ahead and get over the hump, Buffalo. But that's another conversation. And I don't really even want to speak it into existence, but that guy is not going to get you over the hump. But the Bills started physical. And then defensively started collapsing, and they started putting Josh Allen in positions where he just had to go out there and build the offense himself. The Chiefs only had a few third downs. They had their scoring drives were all under like 5 minutes, and they all had every single scoring play the Chiefs had what they classify as an explosive play, which is a play of 20 yards or more. And so the Chiefs, basically, when they needed to, Patrick Mahomes got his guys to get down the field quickly and efficiently, and they dominated, and they made it count in the red zone, which I thought is a crossover to what the Packers failed to do in that 49ers game, where I thought the Packers dominated that game for 50 minutes. Maybe not dominated, but I thought that they were going toe to toe, and really they put themselves in a very good position to win that game if they could finish. But they had problems finishing in that red zone. I think they were only 2 of 4 with touchdowns or something, if I'm not mistaken. So you obviously you had some bad kicker misses. Yes, you had kicker misses in both the Packers game, the Bills game. You had opportunities to win everywhere else. There were bad turnovers. There were some bad turnovers and some bad discipline needed, when it mattered most. And that's ultimately what did them in. I thought there were some crossovers in some of those games. And the better teams, the more disciplined teams, the teams that have kind of been there more often, showed you why that they are there more often.
Right. And, Todd came in with the comment, is Josh Allen overrated? I don't think so at all.
No, I don't think
so. Because I just think it comes down to coaching. I mean, they just put everything on his plate. And, hey, we're in another, slugfest with Patrick Mahomes. Josh, go do it all on your own. If we need a first down, you have to run for it. If we need a big play, you have to pass for it. I think they're putting too much on him. That's why you and I have been hopping on Sean McDermott for a while.
I think that Josh Allen, when he lacks structure, is something that makes him so great and so difficult to defend can be his greatest friend and enemy, and he can be this great playmaker, but within structure, when he had Brian Daboll, he had that structure, and without him there, sometimes it looks like the offense. It looks like they just say, Josh, go out there and be great. And that's where you get these ridiculously bad turnovers. And I think Josh Allen's a gamer. I think that he has a lot of modern day, just like he has a lot of great stuff for like the modern day game. And yeah, he has a couple of things that are annoying. Okay. Like, kind of like the modern game, but at the same time, He's toolsy and he's gritty. And I just think that whole team. Again, I do think it's fair to bring up the injuries. They got crushed by injuries.
Oh yeah,
this year.
I mean their defense was decimated.
absolutely decimated with Tre'Davious White and Matt Milano and a bunch of guys they lost. Like that defense should have been better, but at the end of the day, I think that's more of a culture issue, a team issue. They just need That's why I'm so hard on McDermott, because I think we've seen this team collapse in similar ways, different circumstances, but similar ways over the last few years. And I go back to the guy at the top, and if I'm the Pagulas, the owners of the Bills, they're clearly not going to do anything about Sean right now, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about wasting this team's window. I'm not saying that. I think that if you have a player that's as good as Josh Allen, your window is open for the majority of their career. I believe that. But at the same time, this roster was really well constructed. They do need to. I just think they need the right coaches to push the right buttons. I don't think they have it. If I was the Pagula, Steve, I'd be looking at Sean McDermott. I know what you and I would do. You and I would have already replaced him with somebody else, but I think that if I'm the Pagulas, I'm starting to worry about timeline and longevity. I want to see a championship. I want to see city funding to go ahead and build that new stadium that they want up there in upstate New York. I mean, there's a timeline there for the Bills, Steve.
Right. And go back to what's the Bill Belichick mantra, right? To his players all the time. Do your job.
Mm-hmm.
And with the roster that they have built around them, this team should be right in the conference championship every single season. Not saying they should be in the Super Bowl, because the Chiefs are a great team too. The Ravens are a really good team this year. But they should be right there in the conference championship every year. And they're not, and it's the defense 1 year. I mean, that 1 year against Mahomes, Josh Allen gave him the lead with 13 seconds to go. And, they ultimately end up losing. So,
I got a comment saying Manny Brady comparison is thin and offensive to Tom and Peyton. I don't think so. For one, this is only their third matchup, so it's early in this whole saga. But I'm sure that the same people that loved watching like Troy Aikman and Steve Young were pissed off when people started comparing Brady Manning to that in the early 2000s. So
it's just similar in like the way you put it. I'm not saying it's the same.
We're not saying it. You can classify it however you want, but there are crossover, similarities.
Right. Because now Mahomes is winning with the defense and his great play. Because right now their offensive weapons aren't great, other than Kelsey. Some of the other guys are stepping up. But again, I mean, the Patriots always had guys like that. They weren't great players, but they stepped up in great moments, right? The David Pattons, David Givens, Chris Hogan, Brandon LaFell. I mean, these guys aren't Hall of Famers. They're just, great players. And so, I look at Buffalo in the aspect that this team should be in the hunt every year. And, it just comes down to coaching. I really believe. And, we heard the rumors about Sean McDermott earlier this year. There was a piece, I think it was in The Athletic, that some of the players, were anonymously saying that he freezes in big games. And we've seen that time and again, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think that's a really good football team. I know we don't like the Bills here, being a Patriot podcast, but I really like Josh Allen. I think he's fantastic. And I just think that what they have in place right now is wasting a window where they have all the pieces around him. Like you said, he's going to be, I think, a great football player for a long time. But right now they have all the pieces around him that they need. I think Brandon Beane's done a great job there. I don't think Sean McDermott has done enough by him.
Let's leave it at that for the first half of the show. I like it. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break and for podcast purposes, and we'll be back after this to discuss the Patriots coordinator search. Okay, and we are back here on Patriots 4th and 2. Derek Haven, Steve Balestrieri here, both represented by PatsFans.com. Again, please subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Like, share, leave us a review. Keeps us high on the podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. Starting out the show, we kind of did a variety of topics, Steve, in a flash. We talked about the divisional playoffs, and there was a lot of exciting stuff there. You talk about the Bill Belichick, carousel and musical chairs game around the league where for NFL coaches. I think we're going to start seeing a lot of pieces fall in place here soon. I personally think it's going to go. Steve, I think actually Vrabel's going to be the one who is going to actually be out of the job. If I have to, I could see him landing in Seattle. Is it Seattle that's open, right? I could see Vrabel landing in Seattle, but right now, Steve, I think Bill's going to land in Atlanta because that's just where all the smoke is right now. It's hard to go away. I think Harbaugh going to the Los Angeles Chargers makes a ton of sense for him. He has a quarterback, and the good thing about Harbaugh too, I'll give him credit for, is he builds a nice program. Okay, he builds a good program, and I think they kind of need that structure, and I think that would be a good spot for him. I think David Tepper, the billionaire owner for the Carolina Panthers, is going to be pissed and frustrated, so he's going to give Ben Johnson whatever contract he really wants, and whether that's good or bad or indifferent, I think it would be good to get a very well thought of, forward-thinking OC down with my second-year quarterback, who, by the way, I gave up 3 first-round draft picks for, including what would have been the number 1 overall pick this year. So I don't think he's worried about paying Ben Johnson the $15 million a year he wants, which is ridiculously high. But hey, you know what? Ask for the worst the league can do is say no. So good for him if he can get it. And then I think Vrabel, I don't know if he lands in Seattle. I could see that. I think Vrabel could be the odd man out for maybe just a year. I'd be curious to see if he would have a role on the team. If what he would do. Would he sit out for a year? Would he take a lower than head coach role? I'm not sure. Would he want to go into the front office? I don't know. That to me, I find a little fascinating. But as far as the coaching staff goes, Steve, for the Patriots, there have been some rumors going around. I don't want to speak. I want to be careful how I say this because I don't want to speak for Greg. But from what I understand, he had a report. Greg Bedard had a report that basically Robin Glazer, who's newly hired for the Patriots, who's been working with the Kraft family for a long time, but now in a different role for the Patriots specifically, and Jonathan Kraft are basically the ones that are heading the coaching search and being involved in a lot of football decisions. Then Greg later kind of came out with I don't want to call it like a revision, but I just think he got some kind. I think he heard something from the team because he was very clear on 98.5 to end his time with the weekly spot he does with Felger and Maz on Tuesdays, and I think he was in print as well that it's really Gerard Mayo was the one building the coaching staff. And again, I don't want to speak for him. I'm paraphrasing, so forgive me. I'm trying to give credit, but I don't have it 100% in front of me. So. What do you think, Steve, is the real truth? And do you think Gerard's the one who's building this coaching staff?
It has to be Gerard. I mean, Jonathan Kraft and Robin Glazer, they're great executives, but they're not football people. And
for what it's worth, I think it's Gerard too. I don't think if it got to that point where we found out that's factual, I would have a lot more. I think there should be a lot more concerns for Patriots fans other than what even the roster looks like. I would say what the direction of the franchise looks like would be more alarming to me if that was really the case.
Yeah, and Robert has tried to put all that to rest, saying, that the ownership group is not involved in football decisions. that's why they hire the right people. So we'll just have to leave it at that for now. But I certainly hope that that report isn't true, because, as you said, that would be very alarming, because, ownership doesn't need to be involved at that level.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the coaching staff is interesting. And as we kind of shift to, the coordinator search for this team, it looks like Gerard. It's clear, Steve. You're seeing a Sean McVay delineation and who he's looking at for to run the offense. Zach Robinson has been a popular name that's been thrown out there. Is it Ben Pitcher? Is that is that from the Bengals? Is that their correct name, Steve?
I think it Dan. Oh,
it could be Dan. It could be Dan Pitcher. I'll look it up here. I'll look it up here in a second. But you're someone for the Bengals. You have Nick Caley, who was with the Rams here, and then with the Patriots, obviously. So they've had several guys that have been kind of in the mix for offense. But it looks like they could be going in a totally different direction. Maybe no more Earhart Perkins offense going somewhere else. I was torn on that when that idea was kind of thrown out at some point, maybe even like a year ago. I'm okay with it now. I think I realized that the whole offense needs to be thrown out and started fresh, because I think there's been too much of this. There's too much of this sometimes in big business, but I think on the Patriots, especially on offense, after Brady left, they've tried to hold on to everything and piecemeal these things together. I think you need to totally start from scratch. And maybe that's what they tried to do with Patricia when they simplified things and streamlined things. I just don't think it was well, I don't just think, I know, because we all saw it. It wasn't executed properly, but I think that's what they tried to do and failed. So I think they need to try it again, only with someone, I don't know, who can actually coach the offense. And that's not even really a dig at Patricia, but clearly the results are the results. They need to go with a different kind of offense, one that they can really shake things up and then build off of, and have coaches in place that really know how to run that offense and have experience running that offense. So that's why Zach Robinson, to me, Steve, is a no-brainer. Now, you might be in a situation where someone like him, who's so popular, who's been interviewing with lots of teams, I think that you have to make sure you have that succession plan in place, because he could be someone who's getting head coach looks in the next year or two.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. And, and again, this is where I spoke with Russ this morning.
Oh, yeah, please share.
Yeah. And he said, Derek will not agree with this. But
I'm glad that him and I just, we're just not going to agree.
But he does not want the Patriots to ditch the Earhart Perkins system. He said, because if you do that, then you're just copycatting the rest of the league, and you're just going along with what everyone else is doing.
By the way, it is Dan Pitcher, by the way, so apologize.
Yeah, it was Dan. Okay.
Well, I can see that copycatting the rest of the league, for the McVay offense. McVay, and I'm saying McVay, but McVay, Shanahan.
It's essentially a Shanahan offense.
My whole thing is, Steve, I'm not against the offense that they've run. My problem is they don't have the guys to run it. So you're either going to have to go out and hit some home runs with guys that can do it. I mean, I think they desperately, obviously need a quarterback that can be cerebral and talented enough to really run it. But it only ran it so well because you also had such smart, hardworking position players around him that like Brady and Edelman, Brady and Amendola, guys that that were able to be on the same page before the ball's even snapped based on coverages. It's just so hard. It's just so hard to do that. And it's about timing and rhythm and space, and you're putting defenses in conflict, which is different, but it's so hard to execute that unless you're operating at such a high enough level. And I just think when you're starting from scratch like this, Steve, I think it's so much easier to kind of lean towards the modern game, which is, putting guys in space And it's not necessarily about timing. It's about getting that ball out quick, putting athletes in space, and putting people in conflict in space versus timing. I think that you see that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and Sal just made a great comment because that was the second part of Russ's argument, that he didn't want to ditch the Earhart system. And when we were talking about that, I said, well, the only coach that's available at this point to run that system is Josh McDaniels.
So.
And he said, yes, I want the Patriots to do whatever they have to do, to bring Josh back into the fold. And I said, well, my counter to that would be, why haven't they signed him then? You know what I mean?
I think Josh is going with Bill, and I think even if I mean, I guess I could see a scenario where he comes back if Bill doesn't coach. I don't see any scenario at this point based off what they've done. I don't see a scenario at all, Steve. I would put it at almost 0%. I'll put it at 5% that Josh McDaniels is the offensive coordinator of this Patriots team. I think he has a better chance. I think he's a better chance of being an assistant head coach or like a quarterback coach, passing game coordinator kind of thing, where he's working with a young quarterback. I think he's a better chance of that than being the offensive coordinator based on the kinds of guys they've looked at. And again, it comes down to timing. I think he might be waiting on Bill. And I think clearly the Patriots and Mayo are especially not waiting on that offensive side of the ball.
Yeah. And, and Russ made a good point. He and I talked about this. Josh has deep ties to the New England area. His kids went to school there, blah, 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 all this. So
I don't want to turn this into me arguing against Russ, but I'm glad that you're bringing it up because it does. I know that he's not the only person that shares those feelings. I guess my only thing to that, without having him here to really have the conversation, my only thing would be like, I just feel like it's time to have a clean break, and you already have just sever the ties. You basically cut the arm off, you just got to finish the job. I mean, it's like, and it's not that it wasn't great. It was. And in a perfect world, you just keep rolling. That's just not the scenario they're in. They have too many leaks in that hole to fill for you to keep sailing on it. You know what I mean? I think you're so much better off kind of starting fresh, given where they're at as a roster, Steve. Especially when you're likely starting over. I said likely, not 100% starting over a quarterback as well.
Right. And see, the other thing is that, looking at a guy like Nick Alley, right? He hasn't worked with quarterbacks yet in his career. So, I'd be a little leery about that one. Not that I don't think he could coach, because you and I, when McDaniels left for the Raiders, we were talking about maybe it's time to give Nick Alley a shot. Instead, they went with Matt Patricia, but that was with Bill at the helm. And now, with Gerard Mayo, being a brand new head coach, never been a head coach before, I'm looking at Cali and, Gerard's going to have his hands full, right? First year.
Yeah. That you're bringing up something that's one of my biggest issues, and that's what I'm worried about. It's a layered situation. For one, Mayo is a first-time head coach and a defensive-minded guy. He needs all the help on offense he can get. The second part is my biggest fear about hiring Mayo, my biggest negative, goes back to something that we've talked about a long time before, is when you hire a defensive-minded head coach, you need to make sure that pipeline on offensive coaches is fully stocked and your succession plan is in place. Because let's say that you have Mayo, we know you have. Let's say they hire DeMarcus Covington, internal candidate in defense, and defense relatively stays the same. Let's say they hire Zach Robinson, someone who's one of the hottest names for an offensive coordinator around the league. You go ahead and you have Zach Robinson's offense. Mayo's obviously leaning a lot on Robinson to go ahead and help build that offense because it's less familiar for him, which is something that Gerard just said the other day. All of a sudden next year, he's in a position where he's he's interviewing for head coaching positions. Maybe he gets one, maybe he doesn't. But the time he gets one, it's going to be 1 year or 2 years. So if you hire Zach Robinson, Steve, in my mind, that's only the first part of the puzzle. I want to see what you're going to have to see what you're going to have to see who's the second hire, because I need to know the succession plan, the pipeline. I don't want to hire Zach Robinson and then all of a sudden you draft a Jaden Daniels or whoever it is, and all of a sudden we're in the same position with Mac, where all of a sudden Zach Robinson's gone and we're looking at changing a coordinator right after his first year. That to me scares me. That's how you get in that bad cycle. That to me is one of my biggest fears about the offense. So if you go with the Zach Robinson, I really hope you're also able to bring in someone like a Nick Caley, Steve, so that you can build the new system together. But you need multiple guys. This is not a one-man fix.
No, and then they'd have to bring in a very good quarterback coach, right? That can help Callie out. And then you can build.
And then maybe that's Josh. I don't know if it is, but maybe that's where Josh would sit.
I just have the feeling Josh is waiting on Bill. You know what I mean?
No, I agree 100%. I fully don't expect Josh to be on the coaching staff. I'm just saying if I have to find a role, to me that makes more sense. But can he even be? Can they even work together? I don't even know. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know enough about how someone like a McVay or Shanahan offense and how Josh McDaniels, how that could work and together if they were going to. I just don't know if that would if that would even fly.
Yeah, I mean,
do you have
that's
a
big thing with the offense, because again,
look at
you're
Adrian
looking
Clem
at
and Bill O'Brien and in the coaching staff and everything he wanted to fill out, and he only got to bring in his tight ends coach. He wanted full, he wanted Bill O'Brien wanted to build his coaching staff, and he wasn't really able to. That's why there was rumors going around before he got announced that he was going to Ohio State, Steve, that he didn't really even want to come back. I think he was pissed. I think he was happy to come back because I think he wanted to be back, but I think that everyone kind of thought it was going to go a little bit differently, both from Bill Belichick to Bill O'Brien to Adrian Clem to a lot of different guys. I just think that they had a lot of left hand not talking to the right hand last year, Steve. I think it grew tensions high.
Absolutely. And that's why the offense was a mess once again. I mean, so, we have to look at a bunch of different factors here. And to me, if they were going to hire Josh, I think they'd have already done it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I mean, they interviewed all these guys, and that's great. They checked all the blocks. They listened to what everyone had to say. But I think if it was going to be Josh, it had already been done.
Let me ask
and that way, Russ would get what he wants. That Erhard-Perkins system would remain, and now you're going to have continuity, because I don't think, Josh is going to get a head coaching look for a very, very long time, if ever.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Let me ask you, Steve, who's your favorite? Who do you like the most for the rumored or reported potential Patriots offensive coordinators?
To me, it comes down to, like you said, Zach Robinson. Clint Kubiak is another name that we don't talk about too much. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, again, you make a good point with Callie, because he would have more longevity on the job. I think it would be at least 2 to 3 years before he starts getting head coaching looks.
Yeah. And
if he works out, I mean, he's never been, in that position.
Yeah. And just for whatever it's worth, whoever the offensive coordinator is, I like a lot of the names that are coming out. My whole thing is whoever the offensive coordinator is, I really hope that we get an announcement of another coach who's kind of in that offensive coordinator discussion. I really hope that there's also another coach where we feel like it's all kind of a similar philosophy, and there's someone replacing, if it is Zach Robinson, I hope there's someone there that we feel like could be a successor, because I do think that's a concern. And I don't think the coaching staff has been good enough the last couple of years. I think Gerard even kind of hinted at that, or in some ways even said it when he was with his press conference with with Robert Kraft. I don't think the coaching has been good enough. I think I can pull up the transcript, but I'm pretty sure there was something along those lines in there. I don't think it was really a big shot at Bill. I just think he was saying that everything needs to be better, and it does.
Yeah, and I agree. It wasn't a shot across the bow at Bill.
Yeah.
But he kind of, if you read the tea leaves, he was kind of saying that, Bill was a little too loyal to, his guys. And I think that alluded to Matt Patricia and Joe Judge.
Yep, 100%.
And Cam Achord as well.
I mean, look, I think Cam Achord, I don't like rooting for people to lose their jobs ever, but it's hard when you're talking about a position, entertainment, sporting thing. This is just not, it's professional sports. It's just a different standard. So I'm sorry, Cam Achord, Joe Judge, I special teams need to start over. Too much money allocated there. Too many boneheaded mistakes. The last couple of years, just really a bad operation from scouting to on the field play. It has just not been good enough the last couple of years. They should all go. Defensively, I think there's a lot of good things in place there. Offensively, we've talked about, it's not just right now. It's not just offensive coordinator. It's quarterback coach. It's it's tight ends, because Waring was part of Bill O'Brien. Now that Bill O'Brien's gone, it's like, you're looking at tight ends. I think you're looking at offensive line. We've talked about Troy Brown. As much as we love him, the receiver position hasn't really been fruitful for us. So it's like you question a lot more on that side of the ball than you do on the other side.
Absolutely. And, again, I mean, it comes down to coaching. Bill had confidence in these guys, but Bill always surrounded himself with guys he knows.
Yep.
And, when it all started, when they lost Charlie Weiss and Romeo Cannell, right? Because at that time they were a wagon. And then they slowly built up, with Bill O'Brien, then Josh McDaniels, right? And, Patricia. Then they started to get that going. And when those guys, they've had so many guys, we call it the brain drain. I mean, they've lost so many good, Todd says, Ernie and Dante, they lost those guys. I mean, it's really tough to keep guys for a long period of time.
It's been a brain drain for years, Steve. It's funny because people talk about this coaching staff, the roster, all these things. It's like this has been going on for so long. I mean, they have been
almost 20 years. 2004, 100%. They won that third Super Bowl, and that's when they first lost Romeo and Charlie Weiss, and then it's been going on since then. And but offensively, they do need an overhaul.
And I think you're going to get it. I think they're showing you're going to get it too.
Yeah, and I think the offense is going to change depending on who gets the nod.
So, and I would say the offense has a good chance of changing. I'd put it at a pretty high percentage. Let's call it in the 90s. I just think that's what they're going for. And look, I don't think the roster's good enough. I don't think the coaching's good enough. And I think that a lot of what Gerard Mayo has kind of said or indicated, both whether it's to Steve Burton, whether it's the press conference, whether it's his weekly spot on the radio, I think he's indicated that things are changing, and I think that you should be excited about it if you're a Patriots fan. I'm not saying you could be someone like Todd. Todd, I'm just using you as an example, who all this talk about Bill is making him go through his feelings a little bit. It is hard, and it's not this perfect situation that everyone is certainly going to agree on. But I think that there is some excitement to it. So we're going to be all eyes on the Patriots coaching staff here the next few days, Steve. But as we wrap up the show, which we need to do, let's quickly end with our predictions for championship game weekend. 2 games this weekend, both Sunday. I'm really looking forward to this. Both games for different reasons, Steve. We got the Kansas City Chiefs at the Baltimore Ravens. I'll give you this. I was going to say, this is the quote unquote earlier game. So what's the 3:00 Eastern? The Ravens are favored by 3.5. I think that's a pretty good number. It's going to be a really fun game, Steve. The Ravens are clicking at all cylinders, but can they slay that dragon in Patrick Mahomes?
Well, and again, the Ravens are another example. They always build a really good team, and they don't have a lot to show for it, right?
No, but they do have Lamar playing at an incredibly high level.
Now. And right now, as you said, they're clicking on all cylinders, which is why I'm taking them this weekend. I just think playing at home in Baltimore, that's a pretty loud place. Fans are extremely passionate, and then they have a really, really good football team. This isn't the best Kansas City Chiefs team they've had in the last few years. I think their defense takes it, but I would not be shocked if the Ravens spit the bit again.
So you think the Ravens are going to win?
I do.
Okay, I think the Ravens are going to win too. I will not be surprised if the Chiefs win the game. I do think that Patrick Mahomes is obviously he's a great player, and I think he's a better player than Lamar Jackson. If you had to compare him per se, but I would tell you this: I think Lamar is playing as well as anybody right now this season, and the team is better from top to bottom. So, yeah, you have the Patrick Mahomes factor. You also have the Lamar Jackson factor, okay? And he's given some team fits all year long, and I think at home. I'll tell you this, for Mahomes to go to Buffalo and beat Josh Allen, if he goes to Baltimore and beats Lamar too, that would be incredible. Incredibly tough road. I'm gonna go 27-23, Steve. I think Baltimore. I think they win and cover just barely.
And I think that's a good score too.
Yeah.
I didn't give you a score, but
well, the over-under is 44.5. I could see a 24-20 game, a defensive game, both good defenses, but the quarterbacks are so good in this modern era, Steve, with especially the modern era of the NFL, plus these two guys. I think I could see something like, like I said, 27-23, like in that range. I like that number.
Yeah, I was thinking just a tad bit lower scoring because both defenses are playing extremely well as well. So, but both of these defenses have shown they can score too, right? So you never know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then secondly, Steve, you have another really good game. It's a fun game for me in a lot of ways. So you got the Lions at the 49ers. The 49ers are favored by 7. They're obviously an incredibly good team, but the Lions I think the Lions are kind of being adopted as America's team a little bit. Because I just think, for me personally, it's cool. The last time the Lions were in this position where they were in the NFC Championship game, I was not even 1 year old. I was 10 months old because I was born in 90 in March. So I wasn't even 1 yet. Well, last time they were in this position, and I'm now 33. So I think it's cool to see them. I like the way that Dan Campbell pushes buttons on his team. I don't think his X's and O's and necessarily in-game, decision management, I don't love all the time for Campbell, but his players love him. You can see that he's doing things the right way, and they play so hard for him. And I just like the way they've built their team. They've built a tough physical team that wants to run the ball. And I think this game, Steve, I think could catch some people off guard. If the Lions run the ball early, I think that they, with some success, I think they have a chance to make this game extremely close down to the wire. The 49ers defense is stacked, but that defensive line, they want to play. They want to basically play from ahead and have that defensive line pin their ears back. And they've been susceptible to the run. And the Lions have a two-headed monster in David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, a little thunder and lightning, so to speak. And I think that this game will be close. I think the 49ers win, Steve, but I think the Lions have a chance to make it close. And I think the game will kind of declare itself early if the Lions are able to run the ball with some success.
Yes. And I think for Detroit, it's getting off to a very fast start. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
imperative for them because
Muck it
then
up early, get some points, get a lead, make Brock Purdy play from behind,
right.
pound the rock.
Plus the fact that Deebo Samuel probably is not going to play, and he's a big part of that offense. Now they still have really good weapons, and on the telecast last week, I forget who said it, but they said the 49ers have the most explosive running game in the league, and I agree with that. We saw it at the end of the game. I like the 49ers at home, but I think this one's going to be right down to the wire. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. We'll see how it all plays out. This actually is the game I'm really looking forward to. You can't help but root for the Lions. They haven't been there in so many years. And to see the city so excited last week, I just love that. But I think, I've said on more than one occasion, I think the 49ers are the team I'm picking for the Super Bowl. So I'm going to stick with them. But I think this is going to be a really good game to watch. And again, I think, for Detroit to win, like you said, they have to run the ball and they have to get up early, to force the 49ers defense, away from that pin in their ears back. Because if San Francisco goes up early, that defense is really tough because they have so much speed.
Yeah, they do. It's again, I'm really looking forward to these matchups, Steve. I think that there's a little bit of something that there's a little bit of kind of different styles. I think all three teams, I think all four teams they all play tough defense. I think that the Ravens and Chiefs defense probably is operating even higher than maybe the 49ers. I think there's been a little bit of leaks there, but I still think the 49ers defense is incredibly tough, and they're so hard. They're so hard to throw against because of all that speed, especially when you incorporate their linebackers and Greenlaw and Warner into that mix, which is tough. But all four teams run the ball really well. All four. The Chiefs, and I think I give the Chiefs a lot of credit because even though they don't have the pass catching options and Travis Kelce may be showing his age a little bit, I don't think it's a Taylor Swift curse. I think he's just showing his age a little bit. He's still great. He's still a great player, but throughout the season, it's been a little bit more rough than he's been accustomed to. I think you've seen Isaiah Pacheco play well. We know how well the Ravens and Lamar can run that ball, and we know the Lions and the 49ers, obviously with Christian McCaffrey, who you and I obviously co-signed that could be the MVP. At least if they did it for a non-quarterback. So I don't know. I look forward to seeing these games. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to see what steps the Patriots take, and their coaching staff goes. As far as our next show, we've been traditionally keeping our Wednesday around around 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern, and that'll probably continue as long as both of our work schedules allow us to. It will just also depend on how much news is going around, because if there's some big splashes and we have some time, maybe we'll go ahead and go live with some thoughts, because I'm excited to see where this offensive goes, or where this offensive staffing goes, because I think it'll tell you a lot about not only what the team could look like, but also what players they could be looking at. And draft season is just around the corner. I have been diving deep into stuff as we get ready for the combine and all that stuff, which is always fun. Steve, final thoughts and we'll wrap up.
Well, thanks for Chris and Sal. Sal's a good friend from Hartford. Todd, of course.
Awesome. Yep.
Yeah, thanks for all
Joel.
those guys. But on a non-Patriots note, my heart really goes out to Doug Kayed and his family.
Yeah.
He lost his daughter. I believe she was still only 2. I don't think she even
Hallie was 2. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and she had been suffering with a serious illness for a while, and it's just Doug is one of those great guys. I don't know if you've ever met him personally.
I actually have. Yeah, we had dinner with years ago with James Christensen, who ran any Patriots draft. There's that Red Wing diner, right? Right. We ate there, and I think Eric Friends might have been there from back in the day too. This is probably 10 years ago. But I have met Doug a couple of times. I don't want to sit here and pretend like him and I talk all the time, but
just a super nice guy.
Super nice guy, really good at his job. And, if you're a Patriots fan, I'm sure you've read or heard some of his stuff. He's, and for anyone to suffer that, I don't care who you're a fan or what your position is, for anyone to have to suffer through that is just heartbreaking. And it's just such a tragic thing. And, one of my closest friends has been dealing with a similar situation. The outcome was different, but the journey and the process and the pain that I saw both of them experience, over the last few years is just, heartbreaking and heart wrenching. And I dug if you go to his Twitter account, I don't know whoever's listening. If you go to Doug, it's Doug Kyed. Kyed is spelled Kyed. So at Doug Kyed. I know he has a GoFundMe page, linked to his account for his daughter. If you're listening and can contribute, or I know in lieu of flowers, I think they wanted to make some Dana-Farber, some donations to that. Obviously, a terrific organization. So, again, I thank you for bringing that up, Steve. I didn't mean to hijack it there. I just wanted to add some context.
And again, I wasn't close friends with Doug or anything, but whenever I was down there, and I used to be down there pretty frequently with you as well.
Yep.
Doug was always one of those guys, super down to earth, really nice guy, and he'd bring his daughter to training camp a lot of times, and it was always fun. And I can't imagine what they're going through right now.
Right. So thoughts and prayers to their family, sincerest condolences from both of us.
All of us here, yeah.
And anyway, it's just so sad. So again, if you can donate, or if you want to leave a message, you can find it on his Twitter account, on his Instagram. It's at Doug Kyed, Kyed. We will be back next week unless there's some breaking news. Looking forward to keeping up with that discussion. I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of Patriots 4th and 2. Again, subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Like, share, leave us a review. It keeps us high in the podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. And we will see you guys next week. Take care.